Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, December 5th, 2014. It's the WNW 169, and I got to tell you, the mainstream media, the MSM, is determined to bombard us with this mythological, this did not happen event of hands up, don't shoot. I mean, I started off the week, I couldn't believe it. Started off the week, here's USA Today newspaper, starts off the week with this, the Rams football team picture of, players quietly protest, hands up, don't shoot. That didn't happen. Michael Brown's hands were not up. He did not get executed by Darren Wilson with his hands up, surrendering. This did not happen, according to eyewitness testimony from African Americans. 5 or 6 African Americans said, no, he didn't have his hands up. He was charging the officer. The forensics said this didn't happen. Hands up, don't shoot is a myth. And yet USA Today put it on the front page of its newspapers. USA Today, what are you trying to do? What is your point? And you did not refute this little lie here, this myth of that did not happen. Hands up, don't shoot, did not happen. And they doubled down later in the week on the sports section. So here's that picture again, the hands up, don't shoot, and nothing to regret. Here's the headline. Nothing to regret. No, nothing to regret from the players, I guess, if you think that way, which is wrong. Hands up, don't shoot's a myth. And again, USA Today put this on the front page of their sports section, and they doubled down on a myth without disclosing the fact that, eyewitnesses and forensic evidence said that didn't happen. I mean, I thought USA Today was supposed to be some sort of news organization. Shame on you, USA Today. You posted a picture of a myth that did not happen in a very charged case that has nothing to do with race. It was not racial. That's why the Justice Department isn't going to make a case on civil rights in Ferguson. Now, that doesn't mean all the cops are always cool and groovy about their arrests and what they do. And this Garner thing, him dying, chokehold, no charges, that's going to be a problem. That is a tragedy. That's a part. Of course, he resisted arrest, and, unintended consequences happen when you, resist arrest. But in this case, I mean, after the guy said, hey, I can't breathe, 10 or 11 times, and then they let him lie there on the ground, that's a problem. That said, the statistics don't make a case for this idea that whites are hunting down blacks and killing them. I mean, some facts you do not hear from the FBI. Nearly half of all homicides are committed by African Americans. They only represent 13% of the population, half of all. Also, African Americans are way overrepresented in crimes. That's that hope and change. If they had jobs and employment and they had a future and they had some hope and some change, they wouldn't be in this kind of situation. But the bankers got the hope and change. The too big to fail Wall Street banks got bailed out by the tens of trillions of dollars, and not a single banker gone to jail. And this is what this phony race problem that they're concocting is all about. It's about look over here, look over here, look over here, look over here. The economy is stinking and sinking, but we have a white-black race issue problem. I guess we do now. It's being invented, contrived. It's being nurtured with the help of USA Today newspaper. I guess for political reasons, they need some kind of the economy isn't going to be good in 2016. Obamacare is going to kill off much of that when all this other stuff kicks in. That won't be good. So let's see, maybe we'll invent a look over here. Oh, that's right, race relations are terrible, even though we have a black president, a black attorney general, and we'll have another one after this who'll be female, and we have a national security advisor who's also African American. What a racist country. They elected a African American twice in America. Ooh. I guess Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's, PR man in World War II is laughing in his grave, with the tell a lie big enough and say it long enough, something like that, and the people will believe it. Hands up, don't shoot was a huge lie. They say this, too, Black Lives Matter. Well, not in Chicago. Hundreds of African Americans are killing each other and shooting each other every year in Chicago. And those are good statistics. You know, the left wants to say, well, the FBI statistics, they're really complete. Not the ones in Chicago. They're counting those specifically. Black Lives Matter, except in Chicago or anywhere else where there's black on black crime. It's 90% of blacks are murdered by other blacks. Only 7.6% of blacks are murdered by whites. Twice that many whites are murdered by blacks. But, you know, as they say, those statistics are incomplete. This is being contrived, and African Americans are going to hurt, and they're going to hurt some more as the economy declines. And the Democrats know the economy is going to decline into 2016. They know it. That's why they're inventing this. Isn't it funny? You know, the president came out earlier this year and said, well, I didn't know that, ISIS, or as the Islamic State was gaining so much territory in eastern Syria and western Iraq. I didn't know that. They didn't brief me on my briefings. Of course, the CIA said, oh, yes, we did, Mr. President. We gave you briefings daily. You just didn't read them. Isn't that funny that they didn't actually say he didn't read them, but supposedly he didn't know it was going, so he didn't read them or whatever. Isn't that funny that the president, can't stay on top of national security issues when it comes to ISIS because he was totally in the dark, according to him, basically is what he said. Isn't it funny he doesn't have time for that, but he has time for Al Sharpton to come to the White House more than 80 times? Tell me this isn't a contrived race issue with a twice elected black president. Of course, USA Today keeps cramming down our throats, and this is one of my pet peeves, cramming down. Here's the latest headline, economic growth keeps picking up steam. Really? How about this past weekend where the Black Friday, sales period was reportedly off 11% from last year? Oh, yes, I know, online sales were up some, but it didn't make up for the 11% decline, and that doesn't account for true inflation. And if you use the Fed's inflation, add 1.7% to the 11%, almost 13% decline. Add real inflation, 5% or 9%. Take your pick, whatever, version you'd like to use from 1990s and 1980. They're off at 15, 18, 19%. I guess they don't realize that we have nearly 93 million people out of the workforce, no longer counted. USA Today, what a great economy, it's picking up. I guess USA Today doesn't realize that we have more than 60 million people either on food stamps or on disability. I guess USA Today doesn't realize we still are, corporate America is still, operating under phony accounting standards by FASB. You can value your assets at whatever you think they'll be worth in the future. I guess USA Today doesn't realize we still have money printing. Oh, and 0% interest rates for as far as the eye can see. Yeah, the economy is doing just great. It's really picking up steam. Maybe in some places like tech, it's doing okay, or innovation, places where innovation are farming. But the overall economy, particularly in places like Ferguson, isn't doing well, especially after they burned down, a couple of dozen businesses, most of which are minority owned. You want some more information to show that the economy is on decline? How about now the USA is the new number 2 in the global economy? That's right. China slipped past us. The U.S. economy is declining. We're no longer the number 1 economy in the world. Do you think USA Today should be sounding the alarm about what effects that might have on the world reserve currency of the U.S. dollar? You think China would go to the IMF and say, that's who says they're now the new number 1, go to the IMF and say, hey, listen, we should have a piece of that reserve currency status. We want to be a world reserve, competing world reserve currency, or we want to be the world reserve currency. What do you think would happen if the more than $16 trillion held outside the United States was sold into the market? Because, they're not the world reserve currency anymore. Everybody is making plans and in the process of shunning the dollar in trade. Speaking of dollars, we just have our fresh $18 trillion print of the new deficit, $18 trillion. Greg Mannarino calls me and says, hey, you got to put this in there. Every time that they have, a debt to GDP, gross domestic product, how many things you make and produce, and how much stuff, oil, food, crops, machinery, how much stuff do you produce? GDP, gross domestic product. And what is your debt? Now it's 18 trillion. Well, the GDP of America is 14, 15 trillion. We now have $18 trillion in cash deficit. Anytime that happens, that is a bad omen for that country's economy. Its economic mother nature will punish that country. It will punish its currency, its bonds, its interest rates. It will punish that currency. We are now $18 trillion in debt in a $14 or $15 trillion economy. Greg Mannarino told me, he says, listen, that means that is surely as a marker that the dollar is in the terminal phase. In other words, it's going to take a whole lot more dollars to buy things like food and clothes and gas, no matter what the supply-demand ratio is of oil. Prices, if you're going to have to spend a lot more dollars to live. How do you think that's going to go over in the Ferguson-type communities? Wall Street doesn't care. Listen, if you're rich, you don't care if you have to pay $10 a gallon for gas. It's like, hey, can I get it? Okay, so here's $100. I want 10 gallons. I don't care. But if you're working at Walmart or you're getting a government subsistence paycheck or unemployment check, when the price of things go up and your income doesn't go up, you get squeezed and you get angry. And that's what this is all about. They know they cannot fix the economy. They won't fix the economy. They had a chance to do it years ago by taking bankers to bankruptcy and not printing all this money to bail them out, and they could have added to the capital base and investment. Nope, they bailed out the bankers. Not a single one of them has gone to jail. As Rob Kirby said this past week, we're all being treated to an enormous fraud. And they know it. This is an issue they are concocting. You wouldn't have Al Sharpton at the White House 80 times and then not know what's going on in the Middle East if you weren't concocting a big, fat distraction. The MSM, the mainstream media, that's unbelievable. Really unbelievable. Especially the USA Today, which has business relationships with some of these big banks. The reporting about the criminal activity is pretty lacking in my humble opinion. And it's not just going to be a terminal currency that we're dealing with and big inflation. We may have to deal with outright global war. Look what's happening between the U.S. and Russia. I mean, the words coming out of Russia. I mean, you have Sergei Lavrov who says, underneath, you'd be surprised at how bad the relations are between the U.S. and Russia. The U.S. just sent 100 tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles to Eastern Europe. Now, that's not enough to stop the Red Army, but that's another sign of ratcheting up. The Russians are also sending state-of-the-art aircraft to Crimea, their naval base. They're also beefing up their ballistic missiles and also beefing up their army. Vladimir Putin was out in a big speech saying, no matter what we did in eastern Ukraine, this is what him saying, the rest would come out with sanctions against us anyway because they're trying to restrict our capabilities, to keep us in check, in effect, is what he said. Not exactly, but that's what he said, that they were going to do that anyway. And, the ruble is at near all-time lows or at all-time lows. Inflation is ramping up in Russia. I'm sure the Russians aren't going to have any kind of response to that now, are they? I'm being sarcastic. These are not the kinds of things, this war of words, you control Russian aggression. That's why we're sending the tanks, according to the U.S. military, to, counter Russian aggression. These aren't the kind of actions and words you hear just before peace breaks out. And this is not Libya or Syria or Afghanistan or Iran. This is a country with a real navy, a real air force, and real ballistic nuclear missiles. This is a real foe here. Finally, I want to bring this up here. This is just my version. North Carolina is joining a suit over Obama's immigration actions. They're joining a suit with 17 other states. And, you know, in effect, what the suit is saying is, hey, you're not just using your prosecutorial discretion and not deporting people. You are, in effect, granting rights and benefits to people. And, you know, our governor, McCrory, says we're going to have to pay for that. Along with all these other states are saying, hey, whoa, man, these people have to go to school. We're going to have, you know, more, you know, housing, more benefits, more, there's also Social Security benefits involved, food stamps. You know, he didn't just allow these folks to stay. He, in effect, granted them rights and benefits, and he can't do that. According to this lawsuit, that is completely and totally beyond the scope of his powers. I know the left is like, oh, what are you going to do? We're going to deport, you know, 11 or 12 million people. Well, this is what Congress is supposed to do, come up with a plan. And, you know, Congress, the House has come up with a plan. The first part of it is secure the borders. Harry Reid and the Republicans didn't want to secure the borders. That's the problem. You know, they'd get a lot of Republicans to sign on if, okay, we're going to pass that bill in good faith. I'm going to secure those borders. All you folks, no more. That's it. Stay out. And then we're going to work on this immigration thing. But he'd get a lot of Republicans to vote. They don't want to do that. They want the borders open. This is more this new world order, you know, put Mexico and the U.S. and we don't need a constitution. And Canada, they don't need a constitution. The Mexicans, all together in one block. I mean, they don't want people having individual rights. They want the state to have the rights. They don't want individuals to have rights, such as the rights enumerated in our Constitution. Governor Rick Perry, the outgoing governor in Texas, you know, says one more thing. He says, you know, this is what happened when he legalized all these kids. We had a flood of people over the border, and once again, we're going to have a flood of people over the border. Rick Perry sent 1,000 National Guard troops to the border, and this is another big, huge expense and another big, chaotic mess caused by unilateral actions by President Obama. This is what the lawsuit is about. They want to take him to court and sue him over unconstitutional actions that's going to cost all these states a lot of money, including other federal taxpayers in other states. Thank you very much for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments. Great content. The comments, I read every one before I put it up, and the comments are smart people on this website. Also, thank you very much for supporting the site with your donations. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Fear not.